was watching your podcast and I was watching what you're doing, and I absolutely love having an engaged conversation.
Yeah.
And one thing that Marlene told me a long, long time ago, she's like, you just, when you're interested in something, you ask questions and you want to learn. You genuinely just want to learn. And that ultimately was the kind of the foundation of this podcast, is just to have over a 20-year career in music. I've met professionals in multiple fields, and it's just kind of cool to sit down with a professional in their field and hey, so you're a doctor. Like, what do you, how did you get into this position and what do you do? So it's really interesting to have that conversation. So when I was watching your podcast, I'm like, man,
which is interesting to me. I'm just like, what was watching my podcast?
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah.
You were talking about aliens and you were talking about like, you talked about some cool shit. Like it was weird.
That's what intrigued me too.
But it was fun because you would talk about stuff that you're like, okay, we're going to go down the rabbit hole. For 8 hours.
I mean, all fancy stuff that just seems outrageous.
Yeah.
I mean, but sometimes it's not necessarily true, but
it was sometimes
it's true. I mean, but at the same time,
value.
Then I get you on the podcast. And I'm just like, oh, let's talk about these propositions that are important.
So a precursor to that was as I'm doing these live streams and learning about this, then I'm watching your podcast. I'm like, man, I started really getting interested in it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I think this is something that I can do. And with the fact that we had a friendship that was based around music, and now we had a second, a parallel to it where, okay, now we can connect more on podcasting and understanding this, because I like you said, I like asking questions. And I kept grilling you. I was texting you every day, like, bro, but how do you do this? But how do you do this? Why is there a popping noise? Why is this? What is the bit rate? How is and ladies and gentlemen at home, there is so much that goes into this besides just turning it on and pressing go live. There's a lot of technicality that goes behind it. If
you don't have the curiosity for it, at least, then it's not for you. Well, it's not for everybody.
The fun part too was that during the lockdowns, during the shutdowns, while I was, because this learning curve for me started probably about like May or June, because I think I did my very first podcast with my dad, Father's Day, with my dad and my brother, and I was testing the waters, figuring it out. It was a rough one. It was a rough one. It was a rough podcast, but it was fun because I learned a lot. And then moving forward, I was like really trying to prepare for this podcast.
Yeah.
And as I was learning, that whole learning curve, there were nights when I would text you at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, like, bro, what are you doing tonight? And he's like, nothing. I'm putting the kid to bed at 9, and that's about it. And I was like, cool. So are we going to FaceTime drink at 10?
Yeah.
And we would FaceTime drink, and we would talk bullshit, and we would ask questions, and
I was like this.
Oh, there was one time you fell asleep while we were talking, and I was like, this son of a bitch like fell asleep while we were FaceTiming each other.
I'm like, wait, how do you do this, man? You're like, dude, my clock is different than yours.
Yeah, you normally go to sleep at like 11 midnight.
No, but even when I would go out and see you guys play, I can see you guys are wide awake by even 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh yeah,
and I'm just like,
I don't naturally get tired until 3 a.m. because my clock is 20 years worth of getting home at 3 or 4 in the morning.
Totally, man.
So like there was one time in particular that you were hammered. I was pretty drunk too. And you were like, bro, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I was like, all right, cool. So I'm sitting there in front of the TV, and I'm watching, and it's all a live stream, like between just me and him. And he goes to the bathroom, and I'm like, I'm waiting for him to come back so we can talk. And he comes back, and I see him walking back, and he just stands in front. I was like, so are you going to like sit down? And he just like ends the call. Like he just ends the call, like turned it off. And I was like, son of a bitch just hung up on me. Like, I think you forgot that you were even FaceTiming me. Like,
I think I did, man.
That was hilarious.
Genuinely, man. I think I did.
That was pretty good.
I did.
That was actually that.